Spider-Man Homecoming. I have so many great things to say about it. I have been waiting for this movie to come out ever since Civil War. When we first saw that trailer where Spidey comes in, he slings in, and he steals Captain America's shield, that was awesome. And I remember when I saw the trailer, I immediately started looking at screenshots because I wanted to see, oh, what does the suit look like? Oh man, his eyes actually get bigger and smaller, his eyes emote. In the comic, they showed that as expression, but of course, they would have to do that in a drawing. How are they going to do that in a movie? And they perfectly crafted this almost lens-like feature on his mask. Totally cool. So let me talk about a few things that I really liked about the movie immediately, just right off the bat. Tom Holland as Spider-Man, he is my favorite Spider-Man so far. Listen, I loved Tobey Maguire. When I first saw Spider-Man the original when I was in high school, I remember seeing that movie and being like, this is a game changer for comic book movies completely. But there were a few things in that movie that I always thought like kind of looked a little strange, or that I thought were a little strange about it. Tobey Maguire looked like a man. He did not look like he was in high school. I wasn't buying that he was supposed to be a student. Tom Holland is a younger actor and he looks like he actually is in high school. I feel like if I was in high school, Tom would be someone that would walk by me in the hallway and I would think nothing of it. Yeah, of course that's a student. Which is funny because in real life, to do research, he was actually sent to a high school to shadow a specific student just so that he can get back in the mindset of a teenager. That's a side note, but just an awesome strategy and tactic to take in order to become a teenager once again. Now let's talk about Michael Keaton. Michael Keaton, thank you so much for coming back to the comic book world. It's been a while since we've seen you in a comic book movie. Obviously, you are the original Batman, you're the original Bruce Wayne, you're in those two amazing Tim Burton movies, and thank you so much for that. And honestly, though, too, thank you for not continuing, because we all know what happened after those two movies. But you're back, and you're not the protagonist, you are Vulture. You are the antagonist. You are the villain in this movie, and you did a really great job. So now that I'm done speaking to Michael Keaton, and I know he probably will never see this, in any case, he was so good at portraying a father, someone who cares about his family, and being a menacing, threatening villain who is just tired of the way that the world works. And I think that his character was super relatable because everyone is trying to get by. Everyone is trying to, well, there are some people who are not trying to get by, they're doing very well. But there are a lot of people in the world who are trying to get by, and there are just so many things put into place that they have no control over that set them back. And that is frustrating, and we see that in him. Now, I'm not saying that the decisions he made were the correct decisions to make. I'm not saying, hey, if the world's not working out for you, if life's not working out, turn to crime. I'm not saying that, but I just think that his problems were relatable as a villain. A lot of times, there's so many villains in these comic book movies, and they're aliens, or there's just other things going on, and they have this deep hatred for something, and you don't really know why. I knew why. I understood him. Let's point out Vulture's design. Vulture A looks awesome because he looks like a pilot, but he's got those epic wings, and something on those wings are very important. The propellers. The propellers on the wings make it way more believable and realistic. Like, if you just had some wings without any type of jetpack on your back or anywhere on the wings, those wings are just wings. They wouldn't really do anything, but they had those really well-crafted, I look like an idiot, these propellers on the wings that would spin, and that's how a helicopter goes up, you know, and that's how he would take flight. I thought that was genius. And of course, we have two returning characters. We have Robert Downey Jr., obviously playing Tony Stark as Iron Man, and he always does a great job, and Marisa Tomei, who was first featured in Civil War as May Parker. And I think it's really funny that they're adding a lot of jokes about Marisa Tomei being the youngest Aunt May and her actually being attractive. Now let's talk about the action. Spider-Man Homecoming is full of a lot of great scenes. Is it full of a ton of action? Probably not, but when there is, it's very effective. I don't need to see another movie with a ton of explosions and a bunch of CGI to the point where it's just not even really a live-action movie anymore. If I wanted to go see something like that, I would just watch a Michael Bay film. But Spider-Man Homecoming is really about Peter and his relationships with everybody else. He's trying to hold down his friendships in school, he's trying to impress Tony Stark, he's also trying to be just a good family member with Aunt May, and be Spider-Man at the same time. So, Think about it this way. Peter Parker doesn't know his parents. He has Aunt May, and we all know what happens to Uncle Ben. We've already had 2 movies describing how that happens, and we don't need to see that again. But Peter, throughout his entire life, is without a father figure. Fast forward, he gets bit by the spider and is recognized by Tony Stark. We all know that Peter's extremely smart, so he has a respect, obviously, not only for Tony Stark being Iron Man, but for his career as being a physicist. So when Peter is recognized by Tony for his achievements and his abilities and is asked to join them on a mission in Civil War, and Peter doesn't realize this and Tony doesn't realize that he's becoming this, but for Peter Parker, Tony Stark is now becoming his surrogate father figure. And who better to do that than someone who had a very distant relationship with his father? So Peter desperately needs the approval and the attention from Tony and starts making all these really questionable, terrible decisions that almost kill a lot of people, get a lot of people injured, destroys a ton of property. We're talking commercial property. We're talking like people are just in their backyards hanging out and Spider-Man comes and breaks their fence. If I was at home and some dude came swinging into my backyard and broke a bunch of my stuff, I would be really mad. But like I said, it's this desperate need for approval that drives a lot of Peter's decisions, which then drives the plot. And I've got to give a shout out to Jacob Batalon as Ned. Listen, when I first saw the trailer, I thought that he was going to be that side best friend character that doesn't really matter. He has nothing to do with the story, and he's the only one that Peter can trust, knowing that he's Spider-Man, knowing that Peter's Spider-Man, but that is not what they did at all. Ned was very important. Of course, he's comic relief. He was a very funny character, but Ned makes a joke about becoming Peter's guy in the chair, the person behind the scenes working the computer, helping him out, kind of like, you know, Oracle for Batman. And although when he makes this comment about being the guy in the chair, at that point in the movie, you think it's a ridiculous idea, but it actually ends up happening. And Ned gets to show his skills behind a computer, helping Peter out in what he needs to do in his mission. Now, I do want to switch gears a little bit because there is just one thing that I didn't buy it, and it just didn't seem natural or like it made any sense, and that was Peter's relationship with Liz. If we're talking about relationships with him and his friends and Aunt May and Tony, we need to talk about his love interest in the film, and I just wasn't buying it. Let me explain. In most teen movies, which this movie is very reminiscent to many of them, so much that the Spider-Man cast actually posed as the Breakfast Club cast from the original movie poster. But moving on, in any teen movie when there is some type of maybe geeky character and they are very interested in the unachievable, unattainable, popular love interest, there's always a lot of stuff that they go through and that they have to do in order to get that person's attention. There's a lot of inner conflict. There's a lot of funny things that happen. There's all these attempts at making this person that is unachievable, you know, notice that main character. I feel like that didn't really happen. Instead, Liz kind of already knew Peter at school. She was familiar with who he was. Yeah, she might have run with a different crew. She was in a more popular group. But when Peter asked her out to the homecoming dance, she just says yes. What was unachievable or unattainable? What was the problem? So you're telling me that this girl that he's been admiring for so long, like, she was just gonna say yes to begin with? I don't know, I just felt like the plot kind of fell off. The storytelling fell off a little bit. I mean, if you think about it, it's like, oh, so if she was gonna say yes to begin with, she already knows who he is. I guess she finds him attractive. She thinks he's cute. He could have asked her out a long time ago. They would have been dating already. And for all of you who have seen the film already, we find out that Liz's father is Adrian Toomes. He is Vulture, Michael Keaton. And now we have this triangle of just bad things. I did like how they incorporated Zendaya, who we find out is MJ, into the film. Her character was, I wouldn't say completely needed, but they needed to work her in somehow, and the way that they did it was very interesting. They didn't start out with a Mary Jane character. They started out with somebody else. And it wasn't Gwen Stacy, it was Liz, who ends up moving away when her father gets put in prison. And then they artfully placed in, oh yeah, well, you've seen me throughout the entire movie. My nickname is MJ. Very crafty, I gotta give you that one. So what did you guys think of Spider-Man Homecoming? Because again, like I mentioned earlier, this is my favorite Spider-Man movie that I think has ever come out. I loved the Tobey Maguire version. I liked the Andrew Garfield version. This is definitely my favorite. And maybe part of it is because it's actually canon to the universe, the Marvel universe that we are now accustomed to. But again, I think that Tom Holland was a really great choice. When he starts saying things like Peter would say, these sarcastic, witty things while he's fighting, I think his voice works perfectly. And again, Michael Keaton. Michael Keaton is back in the comic world, and we are so happy about it. So thanks for joining me today, everybody. I know it's been so long since I've done a video. You wouldn't know it because it looks pretty much the same, but I recently moved, and it took a while to get my setup back up and running, but I'm really glad to be back. I'm going to be doing a lot more videos again. I also want to take a second to thank everybody who's been following me, not only on YouTube, but also on Instagram, because listen, I started this less than a year ago, and I'm having a lot of fun with it, and I just really appreciate everybody's support because, again, all of this is for fun, and if you guys like it, I'm gonna keep doing it. So if you're not following me on Instagram, go ahead and join all my other buddies on there. You can find me at Geek Level Asian. I'm really trying to spend more attention to Twitter. I know a lot of people love Twitter, so I created a Geek Level Asian account on there. You can go ahead, follow me on there. I'll try to talk to you on there as much as I can. But as always, keep it real. Let me know what you thought about Spider-Man, and I will see you again next time. I always find it kind of interesting because whenever I see a movie that has any type of homecoming in it, it's a homecoming dance. My high school didn't have a homecoming dance. In fact, I don't think we had dances at all other than the prom. Homecoming for us was a bunch of kids making a float. All of the kids who made that float then got their house TP'd. There would be a bunch of adults at a homecoming football game screaming at children, add a bunch of carnival games and a dunk tank, and that was our homecoming.